America's war on Mexican cartels has shifted into a deadlier, more decisive phase. Beneath a cloak of covert missions and drone surveillance, a weapon few outsiders fully grasp is being readied: the vacuum bomb. Also known as a thermobaric or fuel-air explosive, this device produces a ferocious oxygen-fed blast that can wipe out drug labs hidden in fortified compounds or buried deep underground. As this silent destructor is brought to bear, cartel infrastructure begins to collapse. What actually happens when a vacuum bomb strikes a cartel stronghold? This report peels back the curtain on the raw force and brutal consequences of a game-changing weapon. For years, U.S. Special Operations teams have operated across the southern border on missions shrouded in secrecy. Working alongside vetted elements of Mexico's armed forces, these units tracked cartel leaders and dismantled networks with surgical precision, often so covert that even many Mexican officials weren't informed. High-ranking cartel figures disappeared or were killed, while the U.S. government maintained deliberate public silence, allowing Mexico to claim the visible results. Cartels retaliated by offering bounties on suspected American operatives. Several U.S. personnel quietly lost their lives in the shadows of these campaigns. Now the strategy has hardened. Under the current administration, a sweeping reclassification and a more aggressive posture have been instituted. 8 major Mexican cartels were designated as foreign terrorist organizations shortly after the new government took office. That relabeling expands legal authorities available to U.S. forces, including elements of the Navy, opening the door for counterterrorism-style operations. The CIA has amplified its aerial intelligence footprint, flying advanced drones over Mexican territory to map movements, facilities, and command networks from above. Military and intelligence insiders warn preparations are underway for the largest and most consequential strike against organized narcotics networks since the opening years of the global war on terror. Senior and former officials across the military, law enforcement, and intelligence communities say drone strikes against cartel leaders, vehicles, labs, and storage sites are being seriously considered. High-level discussions among the White House, the Department of Defense, and national intelligence leaders are ongoing, and according to sources, Mexican authorities are aware of the deliberations. The idea of kinetic strikes on cartel infrastructure is not entirely new. In 2020, then, Defense Secretary Mark Esper disclosed that President Trump had inquired about missile strikes on Mexican drug labs, a notion his team later denied. Policy circles, however, note that the logic behind such options has persisted and evolved. Cartels have tried to blunt U.S. aerial surveillance, shooting at drones and burying operations beneath tunnels and hardened structures. But these countermeasures may be of diminishing value. Reports indicate U.S. planners are considering deploying B-2 stealth bombers armed with vacuum bombs to obliterate drug manufacturing complexes and hardened hideouts. Thermobaric weapons differ from conventional explosives because they use surrounding air as the oxidizer. A dispersed fuel cloud is ignited, either by a primary charge or secondary trigger, producing extreme heat and a crushing pressure wave. That pressure wave, the enhanced blast, is often the most lethal component, able to collapse subterranean chambers and incinerate light fortifications. Thermobaric devices range widely in scale, from hand-portable munitions to enormous warheads with yields comparable to many tons of TNT. The lineage of these weapons stretches back more than a century. In World War I, German forces developed crude incendiary shells that burned intensely and scattered flaming fragments. Research continued through World War II and advanced in later conflicts. A breakthrough came during the Vietnam War era, when prototypes of operational fuel-air weapons were developed and tested. One early example, the CBU-55, underwent trials in Southeast Asia in the early 1970s. Engineers and pilots learned hard lessons about delivery, wind drift, and aircraft limitations. Dispersal under small parachutes proved vulnerable to weather, and the canister design created drag that reduced aircraft payload flexibility. Despite mixed test results, the concept matured and later evolved into more effective thermobaric munitions used by U.S. forces in the Gulf Wars and elsewhere. Historically, thermobaric weapons have raised persistent legal and ethical debates. International efforts to prohibit or strictly regulate them, including early proposals at the United Nations, have failed to produce a binding global ban. The UN and disarmament organizations have since classified these systems in categories such as enhanced blast weapons and have repeatedly discussed restrictions, but geopolitical differences have stalled comprehensive treaties. Operational demands drove further development. When U.S. forces faced fighters entrenched in complex cave and tunnel systems in Afghanistan, the need for a weapon capable of neutralizing deep underground strongholds accelerated the creation of new thermobaric warheads, weapons designed to reach into and destroy fortified subterranean networks. One such system, developed for extreme penetration and blast effect, became a focal point of debate because of its extraordinary lethality. In at least one documented instance in the early 2000s, a thermobaric munition was deployed in combat operations against entrenched targets in Afghanistan. Reports indicate the blast had devastating effects on enclosed spaces, where oxygen depletion and overpressure caused many fatalities. Legally, international law does not categorically ban thermobaric weapons, but the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons and Related Protocols restrict the use of incendiary and indiscriminate weapons against civilian populations and infrastructure. Efforts to create more explicit controls or bans on thermobaric systems have surfaced repeatedly, especially in the 1980s and again around 2010, but have not resulted in universally accepted prohibitions. Before any full employment of vacuum bombs against cartels, the United States has already waged a sustained multi-front campaign to choke cartel logistics and finances. One major example, Operation Martillo, literally hammer, was a multinational maritime effort that brought together 14 nations to intercept narcotics shipments moving by sea from South America toward Central America and the United States. Naval ships, aircraft, and specialized interdiction teams established a coordinated blockade across critical maritime routes. Within its first year, authorities arrested hundreds of smugglers, seized more than 100 vessels loaded with illicit cargo, and interdicted tons of cocaine, a blow worth billions on U.S. streets. Billions in value, millions in seized assets and equipment. The operation delivered a strategic dent to trafficking networks. Operation Orion followed as an even larger multinational coalition, involving some 62 countries that pooled intelligence, interdiction assets, and legal authorities. That campaign set records: hundreds of tons of cocaine seized, thousands of tons of other drugs intercepted, and billions of dollars in criminal revenue disrupted before it ever reached consumers. Achieving those results required high-end technology and global cooperation. Spaceborne radar that can detect faint wake signatures, underwater drones to inspect hulls for hidden compartments, specialized boat crews to hunt concealed launch sites in jungle rivers, and cross-border financial sleuthing to trace cartel money flows. On the tactical side, the U.S. Coast Guard's HITRON, Helicopter Interdiction Tactical Squadron, is a case study in precision interdiction. HITRON crews fly high-performance helicopters and use long-range rifles to disable the engines of go-fast boats at sea, stopping smugglers without needless loss of life by shooting propulsion systems rather than crews. Smugglers have adapted with disguised fishing boats, concealed compartments, and submersible craft. But those tricks have repeatedly failed against coordinated, intelligence-driven task forces. Centralized intelligence fusion has been a force multiplier. The Joint Interagency Task Force South, JIATFS, links the FBI, Navy, Coast Guard, Customs, and intelligence agencies in a real-time monitoring and interdiction network. JIATFS follows suspicious shipments from origin to approach, deploying assets at the precise moment to interdict vessels or offload points. Crucial to these operations are law enforcement detachments from the Coast Guard embedded on Navy ships. While Navy personnel lack arrest authority, Coast Guard crews can board, search, and seize at sea, a legal capability that has enabled successful takedowns on the high seas. The cumulative impact of these operations has been severe for cartel revenues and logistical capability. In recent multinational actions, cartels suffered losses measured in the hundreds of millions of dollars. One high-profile asset, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter James, has played an outsized role. On extended deployments, the 418-foot cutter and its 150-member crew have seized tens of thousands of pounds of narcotics in a single patrol period. Shipments with street values estimated in the hundreds of millions. In one stretch of months, James's drone and air assets tracked suspicious vessels for hours, enabling multiple interdictions and the recovery of thousands of pounds of cocaine. Arrests that yielded both contraband and intelligence on trafficking routes and methods. Beyond interdiction at sea, U.S. Navy cutters and destroyers have reinforced regional presence. Deployments of multi-mission surface combatants equipped with advanced sensors have supported Coast Guard and Border Patrol operations across domestic and international waters. In some cases, large surface ships have operated near the Gulf Coast to provide surveillance, logistics, and a deterrent posture. If B-2 stealth bombers carrying thermobaric ordnance are committed, planners argue, the tactical picture changes dramatically. The B-2 Spirit is one of the world's most advanced stealth platforms, designed to penetrate defended airspace, deliver heavy payloads precisely, and withdraw before adversaries can react. Its signature is engineered to be exceptionally small on radar, allowing it to operate in environments that would otherwise be denied. Against cartel forces, even those dug into jungles, caves, and hardened bunkers, a stealth bomber paired with vacuum bombs could neutralize command nodes, labs, and storage sites with little warning. Conventional radars built to track large aircraft, legacy systems operating in L-band frequencies, struggle to detect stealth platforms. A B-2's low observable design makes it difficult to spot with those systems, rendering many defensive counters ineffective. Operationally, commanders envision a combined sequence: a stealth strike to neutralize principal facilities, followed immediately by insertion of follow-on teams to secure sites, collect evidence, and dismantle remaining networks. Because stealth platforms can operate undetected, targets may have no advance notice to evacuate or respond, amplifying the shock effect on cartel command and control. This combination, strategic pressure from multinational interdiction, real-time intelligence from drones and naval platforms, and the potential for decisive kinetic action delivered by stealth bombers and thermobaric munitions, is being presented as the most potent non-nuclear option available. The message implicit in that posture is unmistakable. The United States is prepared to use overwhelming force to dismantle cartel empires and will not shy away from doing so.